Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cricket and the King podcast, the podcast where Jesus is the answer to everything, and we are constantly expanding on that point. I'm your host, Ben, and today I am again joined by my lovely wife, Kitty.
Hello.
And today we are going to be talking about the devaluing of family in society and why that's bad. So we're going to go through some of the issues that we see, some of the things that we've noticed in our culture, the problems for both men and women, because, you know, it takes both men and women to make babies. And and then what we think we can not do about it. Right? We're not going to have a busload of children, I don't think. But we're not population doomsdayers by any means. No. But what we're supposed to be doing as Christians, and then also what Jesus has to say about family, what the Bible has to say about family, because, again, Jesus is the answer to everything, and we're constantly expanding on that point. So we don't want to just talk about the socioeconomics of child rearing in the modern age and then neglect the Bible. So, first of all, it is framed largely in our society as an economic issue. Mm-hmm. And we just don't think this is true. Mm-hmm. And I think largely the historical data would bear this out as well, because there's been several instances in history that people have not had as good of circumstances as we've had now, and they were still having children.
Yeah. And
obviously you can kind of put the weight of that on, well, there was a lack of birth control, or there was a different kind of expectation, or But even those arguments take it away from the economic argument that we see in the West. Mm-hmm. I think the main points that we see in the West are that it's too expensive to have kids in today's day and age, and that housing is too expensive, and what would another, like food, I guess, or...
But yeah, even when we had our first child, there was an expectation of all the things that you needed to have before you had kids. Right? Like you needed to have a really established career. You needed to have housing, all this stuff. Like you needed to own your house.
Own a house. Yeah, specifically. Yeah. Which in Canada, we live in a very unique like housing kind of crisis. Like housing makes up 30% of our economy.
Yeah, there was a very specific set of expectations that you needed to have before you had kids. And those things are becoming increasingly more challenging to do, which I think people just take that as, I can't have kids.
Yeah, and I think they were challenging to do in our day and age, and they're even more challenging to do now, 10 years later. Mm-hmm. We could, like, kind of lay out, too, that the societal expectation of what a kid needs, I think, is largely overblown. I'm not saying that if you're in dire poverty, having children that you can't care for and that are going to suffer, obviously, that I don't think that's helpful. And I've been to Africa where that is the case for a lot of people. Like they're stuck in horrible poverty and mom gets like assaulted or whatever, and then it's, very, very challenging. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about having like a loving family in the context of Western society.
Yeah. And it's like all the extras, like, oh, my baby needs to be in Mozart, like baby Mozart classes.
What's that stroller brand that's super expensive?
It's like Uppa Baby, or I don't know. We never had
an expensive stroller. But even looking that there's some strollers out there that are like $1,200.
Yeah, and it's like you can get a beater of a car for that, but a car nonetheless.
I don't know if you could even get a beater for that these days, but yeah, $1,200 for a stroller is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And we're told that we need all of these things. But again, because of these different times in culture, there were horrible circumstances, but the value of family was upheld, and so people having kids still occurred. Mm-hmm. So just saying that, it's because of the way things are right now in our society economically is not a good argument.
No.
Because people have been having kids since the dawn of time. If they didn't, then humans wouldn't exist.
Yeah, even throughout history where there was like gatekeeping for education, but you still had people in lower classes that were having children. Like time keeps moving forward and times change, and we have family, right?
Yeah, family
keeps on keeping on.
Family is the building block of society. Mm-hmm. But our culture kind of has neglected that in favor of a new model. Yeah. And so what is wrong with our culture that's setting people up for failure in families? So I think it's that our culture values the individual above all else.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the main issue, is that the individualism that created Western innovative society has been taken over by people who are like, the individual is the highest goal.
Yeah.
Like autonomy or freedom of the individual is the highest goal.
Mm-hmm.
And because they've done that, it makes people not have kids and not see the value in having kids, because having kids is in fact sacrificial.
Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily go along with the cultural narrative of like your success needs to be like the highest value, or your happiness
and
or
success
whatever else.
Corporately.
Mm-hmm.
It
like that climbing up the ladder.
Yeah, we don't have a view of success in Western society right now, or modern Western society, where we're like, oh, having a family and an okay job and just living as a normal person is success.
Yeah, like valuing contentment.
Yeah, valuing contentment. And as the Bible says, godliness with contentment is great gain. But we're like, no, you need a C-suite job. Like, you need to be
never enough.
CEO, COO, CFO. Like,
and there's always higher, right? Like there's always more money to be had.
Yeah, and you need to be making all these moves, acquiring all this power and status. I think because of social media and people projecting their lives out into the world, that status has become so much more of an idol than it has in the past, or of something that we worship or look to desperately. And then it's hard to climb the status ladder when you're taking care of a baby.
Yeah.
So anyway, so our culture basically is focused on individualism, and then we've lost the ideals that were holding up our society. I think this affects men and women differently. I don't necessarily think it's the same subset of problems for women as it is for men, although there is crossover. So let's maybe rip into the guys first. I'm a guy. I feel like I can criticize them with more authority.
I feel like I just have one more point about just like ways that we're setting people up for failure, essentially. But I think like maybe saying just like an overprotective parenting, how that, like the trend of overprotective parenting where we're denying kids responsibilities and the ability to move forward.
Oh, and making them feel unprepared for parenthood?
Yeah. So if you have an 18-year-old who's never had a job, never had any kind of responsibility, you've never cleaned anything, right? Like there's lots of things.
Mom does your laundry.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of experiences you haven't had, or things you've been held back from, right? I think that just those feelings of not being prepared, you know, you're being launched into adulthood. In some places at 18, you're already a legal adult. Some places it's 19, some places it's 21. But if you are a teenager that you've been heavily sheltered, heavily held back from pursuing things, right? Or just you haven't been given responsibility. I think that's going to be, that's really going to hold you back from the growth that needs to happen to be an adult.
To even engage in the idea of having a family?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can see it in previous cultures. Generations ago, like, you were considered a man when you were 16, even just maybe 100 years ago. You know, 16 was like, it was time to enter society. There were professors that were 17 and 18, meaning they were teaching other students, which is crazy, right? To be on the tenure track and be a professor now, you have to be like 42. Yeah. I mean, there are younger exceptions to this rule. There's some professors under 30, but it's very rare. And then to be able to like farm and build your own house. And if you read, our kids are homeschooled, and our oldest reads the Laura Ingalls series, or what's it called? Little House on the Prairie. And you hear about that. And you know, it's like, Papa, I'm a man. And he's like 17 trying to marry his 15-year-old, you know, high school sweetheart, and they're going to go farm sheep and like build a life in the woods.
Yeah. And you,
oh my gosh.
you read those stories, and there's such a contrast between those stories and now, right? You hear a lot of like, let kids be kids. And as much as that's true, like in the Little House on the Prairie series, for example, you see them like playing. You see them playing in the creek, playing in the fields, doing stuff, having fun. But it's balanced by being a productive member of your family.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Feeding the chickens.
there's expectations,
Yeah,
right? Like you
they
look
had
after
choice.
your little
Yeah.
siblings, you're helping ma and pa in that situation, right?
Yeah.
You're doing stuff, and there's an expectation that you should be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And giving responsibility, I think, is lost on our generation. We don't traditionally hand off responsibility really well. And previous generations didn't do that very well either. I think the culture of mentoring has really degraded, and that mentorship is what empowers you to feel like you can take on new and diverse challenges, such as, marriage, having a family. And there's a real vice grip that older generations have on positions of power and positions of leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, there's changes to society fundamentally in that people are living longer and staying healthy longer. Like the median age of death, I think, is 86 or something in Canada. That's much older than historic,
And died in childbirth.
Yeah, the ripe old age of died in childbirth. I do think that there's a shift happening because of the level of healthcare and, penicillin extended human life by a huge amount. Because of those things, we have changes in society that are due to technology. But I think that culturally, the hyper individualism and selfishness that's promoted actually prevents healthy mentoring from happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, we're going to talk about like the problems for family, starting a family for men and women, like as they purport kind of to the individuals.
Yeah.
So I was going to rip into men, and we went on this rabbit trail, I was about to do that. So now I'll get to that. So I think that infantilization that you're talking about for boys, I think that is actually the main problem for boys, is that they haven't been given enough responsibility or trust. And there's also a degradation of males in our society. Everybody beats this drum, like boys have been oppressed or whatever. But I don't think they've been oppressed. I just think that in our system, like they are told to be less rowdy, told to explore less, told to do less cool things. And it's not helpful to them gaining responsibility, gaining skill acquisition, and then going out into the world and doing things. And I think a large part of blame lies at the feet of our education system.
Yeah.
Because we expect boys to sit around and do nothing. High school is largely not valuable if you're not going to pursue higher education.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of boys would be better off kind of going to school till they're 15, so maybe grade 10. So, basic math and whatever. But then you don't need really anything past grade 10 to be able to join the workforce, especially the technical trades. There's some trades where more training is required. So if you want to be an HVAC tech, there's quite a bit of math and calculations and some ladder logic stuff. So you might want your grade 12 math. Same with electrical, which I'm a journeyman electrician, so I've been through that trade school. Carpentry, I would say you need grade 10 math, grade 9 math, maybe. Plumbing is kind of similar. There's some calculations in plumbing, like pressure calculations, that are kind of difficult. But you can get the training in the things that you need to know in the technical school and on the job. And I think young boys would be massively served by changing the educational system to allow them to, if they want to continue to pursue learning and be academics, they can do that. But if they want to go work and acquire skills and mastery, which is part of what builds the confidence to be able to have a relationship and want to start a family, and trades, you can make pretty good money doing trades. So you would set these kids up for greater success. Another thing with boys that I think is really destroying the culture is the respect for women. I know we have this like women's rights thing or whatever, but our culture is like very pornography centric, and it creates a massive devaluing of women that I don't think we can even perceive as a society.
Yeah. And then there's like women that try to like get ahead of the curve, and they're like, well, I'm going to choose to do OnlyFans. But it's like, that's driving the devaluing even further, right?
Yeah. it's like you're just seeing like the physical benefits of a relationship, right? And if those benefits are restricted in any way or hindered to you in any way, your selfishness tells you that you don't want a relationship like that. And a real committed relationship does not look anything like the engagement you see online, you know, to kind of gloss over it without using too much vernacular.
Yeah.
But it's not good for boys' perception of women.
No.
And boys' perception of relationships long term with women.
And it's not very motivating for men either, right? Like to create a life that you can bring women into, or a woman into.
Yeah. We're not advocating harems.
Yeah. if you can just have any woman, any nationality, just on your computer or on your phone, right? Yeah. That's not very motivating to build a life and to be a man, right?
Yeah, you're kind of referring to something that's called the male sedation hypothesis, which is that pornography, video games, and like drugs essentially are demotivating men to do the things that motivate them. Because, you know, to be frank, sex is a huge motivator for guys. It's massive for young people, especially. Yeah, you know, I wish it was all sanctified and we were just motivated by our pure pursuit of Christ, but largely that's not the case for young men, especially. Yeah. You know, it's very motivating to be like, no, I want to pursue a girl. I want to get married. I want the benefits that come with independence and marriage. And historically, you know, that's what benefited people.
Yeah.
The Italians ended up, because only the firstborn son had the rights to marriage and whatever else. Like, so they ended up shipping off all of the younger brothers to the New World, basically because they were worried that, you know, their rowdy energy was going to destroy the society, which it probably was. And we have enough singleness in our society to destroy our society today, like unsettled young men, but they're sedated by pornography, video games, stimulants, alcohol and weed. Like, I think those things really detract from the motivation.
Yeah.
And then let's move on to the problems facing young women, because, you know, young men, they got to do the thing. They got to raise a family. They got to see it as valuable. But young women, it's pretty much the same story. Yeah. And those problems in young women are, I mean, vicious. And our society, because it's already largely childless, a lot of women don't see babies. Like you can tell me that trend that you were seeing. And then I was shocked. I was shook by this trend.
There was a trend going around on social media of women, maybe like just at a party or with their friends, just in these social gatherings. And these women were holding a baby for the first time. And sometimes these women were 25, 30, 35, holding a baby for the first time. And the reaction that they had was just so uncontrollable. Like they would just start crying, and like it's like they were discovering for the first time that babies were precious and valuable and worth protecting. And it's so easy to deny that part of yourself
if you biology.
Yeah, if you shelter your whole worldview from that. Like if you just try to create a reality where kids don't exist, babies don't exist. You try to go to the like places where it's like 50 plus or 20 plus, like adults only, like you can't have kids here, and you know, bars, nightclubs, there's no kids anywhere, right? And you're just creating a reality where kids don't exist and they're not there to inconvenience you, and you can just have a fun time without them, right?
And so largely I assume these people are people that don't have a ton of younger siblings, because then you would have probably held babies at some point in your life. So it's probably people with one or two siblings and born about 2 years apart, and then maybe even less, sometimes only children. And they've had this life completely insulated from babies because, again, our culture, the birth rate is, I think, like 1.8, 1.6 or something. I don't know. I don't pay attention to the statistics super hard, but it's very low, like births per woman. And the Amish are like carrying the team, the Hutterites and the Amish. They have their own problems. We won't get into that. But the birth rate is low to the point where there are much fewer babies and children in society.
Yeah.
And so women aren't even getting to see the value of it. And then on top of not seeing it and not being able to physically participate in holding a baby or being around children, they're also told that children ruin your autonomy, they ruin your body, they ruin your independence, and
they hold you back from a career.
Yeah, they'll hold you back from a career, which like, oh man, oh boy, I only wish I could work for Amazon for another 14 years providing value to the consumer. Like, what in the world kind of perspective is that?
Yeah.
Because I think it's masterful manipulation to convince women that staying in the workforce to be miserable is like what will make you most free. And I'm not saying, because everybody's motivated by different stuff. I don't want to be like, if you want to work, you can't, and you'll be happier just like pregnant and barefoot in the kitchen. Like that's never the message.
No.
But it's definitely a very tricky lie in society.
Yeah, misplaced values.
It's a complete case of misplaced values where you are thinking that you want one thing when really another thing will make you more happy in the more permanent sense as well. Not just like from the ages of blank to blank it will make you happy. It's like into your old age you will be grateful that you had kids. And so something that's hilarious that you told me women were saying there, they were like, I'm the first one in my line to realize the nuisance of having kids or whatever. What was it? How was it framed?
I don't remember, but it was basically like understanding how free and liberated you are because you don't have to have kids. And like it was almost like a message of pity towards all the people that went before them, all the women that went before them, and they're like, I am the first one in my whole line and blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, and you're gonna be the last.
Yeah, you will be the last. You will be the last in your genetic line to not
which is really unfortunate. And like, but it's like that's not the flex that you think it is, right?
It's like very obscure. And I don't. Okay, so I want to be clear that we are not saying like you must always have children if you want to be valuable in society as a Christian. One of the greatest Christians ever, the Apostle Paul, he was single as a Pringle, and his genetic line died, and he wrote very valuable scripture and by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, and lived a life preaching the gospel and doing good things. You know, celibacy and singleness, if you're called to it by the Spirit of God, I bless you, go on your journey in peace. But for everybody else who is burning with passion, as it says in the scriptures, you know, and you want to get married, like it's good. It's good to get married.
This isn't like a poo-poo message on someone's circumstance. They're like, that's all I want. I'm 31 years old and I just haven't met anyone, but I want kids. It's like we're not attacking you, and we wish the best. This is specifically geared towards a cultural message that is currently attacking family. Yes.
And there are like kind of collective problems with the way that we structure family right now as well that add to this devaluing and in our culture for a long time. So I always say that in the West, we're like fish swimming in the water of Christianity without even realizing it. Like you're asking the fish what water is and they're like, I don't freaking know. Right? Like we're swimming in this culture that's upheld by Christian values and morals, and our society doesn't realize it. And as we become unmoored or detached from those values, then things begin to break down and family collapses because the values of Jesus that we're holding families together and the standards of behavior begin to degrade. I think a really important thing to talk about is how sketchy it is to be married as both a man or woman, and the culture that promotes this like, oh, you got to provide for you whether you're a man or a woman, because if you're a woman, you don't need no man. And then if you're a man, the woman's going to try to take everything from you.
Yeah.
It's like a cross-gendered complete mistrust.
Yeah.
So like you're being told, so I'll just focus on both sides here. So if you're a man, you're like, you need to protect yourself, get a prenup, make sure that your woman is aligned with you, because all women are are, you know, some derogatory term, and she's going to take all your money, and she's just looking for like a handout, and you know, it's not worth getting, because they call it like hypergamy or hypergamy. I don't know how to say it. I've read the word, but like they say like, oh, like women are always seeking multiple partners or whatever, like crazy red pill deep on the internet stuff. Right. And that's what young men are being told about family and marriage and women. And then on the other side, women are being told like, oh, he might leave you for a younger, prettier woman. He has no obligation to stay. Like, you have to make sure you trap him, or you have to have, one of the crazy things we've heard is like, you have to have a secret emergency fund.
Yeah.
I've heard this for both genders. You have to have a secret emergency fund that you are hiding away from your spouse, so just in case, you know, just in case a rainy day, it all goes sideways. It's like, what kind of broken trust and insane fear are you letting drive your life?
And again, like there's women that genuinely are trapped in like abusive marriages, and so we're not like, you shouldn't have a fund and you're trying to get out, right? Like, we're not talking about that. We're just talking about like all of the mistrust and just starting marriage off on the wrong foot, just culturally in general, just the things that people hear and the mistrust, and how all of those things are a huge problem.
Yeah. And then letting people go into the cultural narrative, like, it's like, I'm just thinking about people that are married, that have a family, and that suddenly are like, oh, the cultural narrative is the way I want to go. Like, I call them like eat, pray, love moms, right? Like they're women in their mid 30s or like early 40s. They're like, I've been restricted by religious expectations, and I just want to sow my wild oats and be free in the world, and I just want to do yoga and eat grapes in an Italian vineyard. I don't know. I'm just... Yeah,
but circling back to even what we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, and like elevating our happiness and having that be your
that's where
number one
from.
goal. Like that's where that comes from. And it says that other people are totally expendable if they are not feeding into your 100% happiness all the time.
Which is crazy.
It's crazy, right? Because like marriage requires sacrifice. It requires work. And you're not always going to feel 100% happy.
Yeah. Happiness is overrated. Unless you are living on a moment-to-moment IV drip feed of MDMA, you will not feel constant bliss.
But
Praise God.
biblical mandate for marriage is actually quite radical.
It's sacrifice.
Yeah, it's sacrifice. And it's a lot of trust, lots of things that are packed into those super controversial verses in scripture that nobody really wants to touch. But it's packed with some really good stuff, which is totally contrary to the messages in culture right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. The self-sacrifice, I think, necessary for a healthy marriage, and the giving up of your temporary happiness to see greater long-term gain in a lasting marriage and relationship is, it's being completely degraded by the cultural narrative. Like, eat, pray, love wouldn't exist if you valued your children and your husband. And I'm not saying husbands aren't to blame for this, right? There's lots of husbands that are disengaged and they're not sacrificing.
No.
It says husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. I think that's a super important verse. And, you know, give up your life like Christ gave up his life for the church. Like, we need to be sacrificing for our wives. And that doesn't necessarily mean letting your wife walk all over you, I don't think. But it is just it is being like, I love you, how can I empower you to become the woman that God made you to be? You know, and I think that's a different perspective, because there's a lot of like kind of more reformed Calvinist theology people that are like, submit to me, and it's like real,
and they put such an emphasis on that part, you know. Arguably I think men have the harder end of the deal in that verse.
For sure, I agree. And another point that I wanted to touch on was that part of the reason, I think, for the pullback from family and the cultural ideals is because there is a doomsday narrative that's really strong. Now, I think there's been kind of a doomsday narrative in almost every culture, but because of the internet, our doomsday narrative is very strong. And so there's nihilism, meaning like a belief that there's no point about anything.
Yeah.
Or no purpose, no meaning. People are saying like, oh, because of climate change, or because of, I don't know, economic inviability, or because of AI takeover leading to loss of all jobs, there's no point in having a family. That's so detrimental. You know, the end of the world, regardless of what bad things happen, I don't think that having a family will ever be something that you regret, because it's what you're made for. Like, family is what society is for. We built this whole thing for families to exist. By we, I didn't have a huge part of it. I didn't put up the power lines, right? But like, the basis of society is family, and we wonder why everybody's so lonely and isolated and purposeless. And then you come to communities like the community we live in is specifically a safe haven for families. People look up where to go, like a culture that values family, and a place that has good amenities for families, and good
safe.
Yeah, that's safe, you know, without a bunch of fentanyl zombies wandering around, and they'll find our community and they'll come here. So we live in a weird bubble of family.
Yeah, but we understand that this isn't the case for everywhere.
We don't live in the norm, and our friend group is not the norm either. No. Most of our friends are under the age of 35, and they all have between 2 and 5 children. That's absolutely wild, right? Yeah. We live in an exceptional cultural niche.
But we've lived places where we have had kids, and people will look at us like we're crazy. Right?
Yeah, when we lived in larger urban centers and more liberal locations, even if it was a small town that was more liberal, you're looked down on. Yeah. If you have kids, they're like, "Oh, you had kids? You're destroying the environment, sweetie." Like, it's crazy, right? Yeah. And you have these people like, "Oh, that must be hard that you're so oppressed as a stay-at-home mom." Yeah. You know?
I've gotten that before.
Oh my gosh. We had one gentleman who we were trying to explain to him, and you were trying to explain to him too.
We weren't even talking to him. We were talking to each other.
Yeah.
And he was eavesdropping. The conversation was basically talking about how being a mom is enough. Like, if you want to do other things, that's great. Yes. But at that time, which was 9 years ago, it was not the message to be a mom. It was like you had to be a mom and a mom boss. You had to be a mom and then also be working up the corporate ladder. Like it was just, there was a lot of pressure from like mom blogs and whatever. And so we were having a private conversation in a hot tub about it's enough to just be a mom and how that's valuable work. And this man listened into our conversation and kind of swooped in and I think really thought he was liberating me in that moment from you. But like, it was just so bizarre.
I'm the great oppressor.
Yeah, and we were trying to rehash this conversation with him. Like no, like I feel so much purpose. I'm very fulfilled in what I do, and that's okay. Like, I'm doing important work. And then he looks at me and is like, but what do you want to do? As if
what you just said about the value of being a mom and feeling so much purpose, intention, and fulfillment in raising your children wasn't enough. Like, it whooshed over his head like a 747. It was the most startling realization of how deep the cultural poison had gotten into people, where I'm like, you devalue motherhood so much that you listen to us have a conversation about the value of motherhood, and he's like no, but sweetie, don't you want to be like a sales rep for don't you want to be a sales rep for Amazon? I keep on ripping into Amazon, but don't you want to work for Google or Apple? You know, like, don't you have big dreams of being like a boss B-word?
Just like, be a number in the system somewhere. You'll be so much more fulfilled.
You'll be so much more fulfilled working for a nameless, faceless corporation. Yeah. You just don't understand how hard you have it. Yeah. It's crazy. It's the most wild. Yeah. And we've watched, I mean, how many people in our lives that we've watched, I mean, you can call it baby rabies or you can call it whatever you want, but they get to a certain age and they realize that they really want a family and that they really want children, but the way they've positioned their life and prioritized their decisions makes it so that it's very challenging to get to that end. You know?
Yeah.
It's hard to find a mate. It's hard. And after 35, it's considered like a geriatric high risk pregnancy. So a lot of couples struggle with infertility. Like, can I say, like even us, like we have 2 kids, but we seem to not be able to have any more kids despite wanting them in the past. So, and we're not old, like we're both just over 30 now. And so that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And it's never a guarantee. Like, I think people think like, oh, like even for us, we're like, oh, we might start thinking about having kids when we're about 27. And that's just not how it worked out.
And if we had waited till 27, if we had waited till 27, we would not have had kids.
Yeah. And we are so grateful for that. But I think people, they plan their lives as if there's some kind of guarantee of an outcome. And it's really sad, actually, to see these women or these families that come to these later years in their life and they're like, okay, now I'm ready. And their body just is not ready anymore. Yeah. And that's really sad. And it's becoming more and more common.
Yeah. Historically, if you were over the age of 35, you were a grandma. Yeah. Typically. That's how most of history went. And that's how biology happens to be for humanity.
Yeah. And that's considered a young mom in places like New York or California, right?
Vancouver. Yeah.
It's in big urban centers where people have the opportunity to climb up the corporate ladder, right?
It's super wild. Yeah. Right? And we wonder why there's all kinds of health risks and complications and increase in C-sections and autism and all these other things. Yeah. And it's like older parents contribute to these problems, like geriatric parents, basically. It's super problematic, and not being willing to admit it as a society because we're not willing to admit that our society has incorrect values is so harmful to people long term. It's just the absolute worst. So what are the benefits of having kids? I think we've really leaned into like how cultures like shamed it and what it's told us about not having kids. But I think it's really important to mention the benefits, like the benefits that we've experienced and the benefits psychologically that we know to be provable fact. And the biggest benefit is maturity. Yeah. Because having children requires self-sacrifice.
I know for me too, like I thought I was so patient before having kids, and there is nothing that humbles you more than being at the mercy of like a 2.5-year-old that's having a tantrum, and you're like, oh wow, there's parts of me that need a lot of work, you know? Oh yeah. And so it forces you into this uncomfortable place where you have to address parts of yourself that need to grow.
Yep, your own selfishness, your own impatience, your own emotional dysregulation. Yeah. Like there are a whole myriad of things that you will have to work out when you become a parent.
Yeah, and it's really easy to ignore those things if you don't have anything around you that's challenging you, right? Like, because you can be in pretty cushy circumstances where, you know, your limits aren't really being tested and your patience isn't being tested. But when you have a kid, like it's tough. It's really tough. And so there's this inevitable, right? And there's the option too, where you can just avoid growth and you can remain in your patterns and you can be dysfunctional, but there is a very real challenge to grow, to be the parent, to be the adult in the situation, and you know, to actually parent your kids and lead them in the way they should go, right?
Yeah, it forces you in a place where you may have no other leadership or accountability. It forces you into leadership and accountability in a way that you will not experience anywhere else in your life. Yeah, because you're responsible for discipling this little beautiful person. Yeah. And again, it exposes these flaws, because you can think that you're all patient and good, but you have this oasis of solitude that you can go back to if you're a single person, if you're, you know, even if you're married.
Netflix, you can tune out, right? Yeah. Rinse, repeat the next day.
You got 5 hours to just come home and be like, oh, I worked so hard. And then, but like with children, like you must prioritize your time better. We actually became more efficient with our time. Yeah. And better at planning and organizing after we had children. Yeah. which was crazy.
Yeah.
That was a very crazy experience to have.
Mm-hmm.
We're more productive with children than we were without children.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because it made us grow up.
Yeah.
It made us be
and
responsible.
You don't take time for granted.
Yeah, and you do not take time for granted, especially when you have kids,
Mm-hmm.
because they're up and they're doing stuff, and you're trying to keep them from sticking a fork in an electrical socket all the time.
Yeah.
Another important thing about kids is meaning.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of meaning and purpose comes from having family and discipling and loving our children.
Mm-hmm.
I think we learn a lot of things about God and about ourselves, and we feel a lot of peace when we do engage in having a family, because like I said, it's what we're made for. Everybody before you in your family line had kids. That's why you're here.
Yeah. And it's so cheesy to say, but just have the revelation of God the Father, right?
Mm.
I feel like those things are so much easier to take hold of when you can see yourself in that scenario and you have the direct comparison with your children, right? Like, I know for me, I had such a big revelation of his love for me and his patience for me and all these things just through parenting. And I know that that's true for so many people. And I know that that sounds really cheesy to say, but it is really true.
Yeah, it's a revelatory experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are like, because you know about the Father's love kind of in this mystical, far off way.
Yeah.
When you're not a parent, and then when you are a parent, you're like, oh, I get it now. You know, like the Israelites threw temper tantrums, and God was patient through it all. But discipline was required. Like there's all kinds of clarity, I think, that comes to Scripture and lots of other parts of God's character when you do have children. And then the other thing, like, we're made for having families.
Yeah.
The Lord in the beginning, God was like, be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah.
And
that's what people do.
And that's what we do. And just because things are falling apart and people are devaluing family doesn't mean that the underlying truth that you are going to find the most purpose, meaning, and value in your life in having kids and starting a family, it doesn't make that not true just because the culture says, no, that's wrong.
And again, if you're someone that doesn't have kids.
Oh, yeah. We should clarify.
We'll just caveat that.
Yeah, caveat. Like, if you don't have kids, if you can't have kids, if some external circumstance happened to you where you, it's not in the cards for you, there is still growth and maturity and knowledge of God's character that is available to you. Like outside of having kids. We're talking to people who are living in the culture, who don't realize that their mindset is being shifted by something that's poisonous. But if you are like in total agreement with us and you're mourning the fact that you cannot have kids, or that this time has passed for you, or that you believed lies long up until a point that it made it not a possibility for you. I mean, first of all, there are kids that need homes in this world. So you can go on that journey. There is a lot of kids in the foster care system. There's a lot of kids that are orphans in this world, and you can be the change you want to see in the world.
Also, it's
a lot harder though.
There's a call to discipleship as well, right? So like if you're finding that maybe you're isolated, you don't have kids of your own, there is still an open invitation for you to mentor people that are younger than you.
Go mentor some teenagers.
Coming back to the verse that you brought up earlier where, Paul says, it's better for you to be like me, but if you can't, if you're burning with lust. But Paul and Jesus both had that in common.
Yep.
So we are not saying that you're only going to find purpose in having a family, but something that Paul and Jesus had in common was their sacrificial life, which again is a common thread throughout parenting.
A life of service to other people.
Yeah.
Both Paul and Jesus more importantly, because he's the main example.
Yeah.
they lived their lives in service. And what did they both think of children, right? That they both thought highly of children. Paul, even though he had no children, thought highly of children, because when he's talking about the standards for elders and deacons, it says they must manage their family and their household well.
Yeah.
Right? Which means like their kids are educated, honorable, loving God, having a good understanding of right and wrong.
Yeah.
And then Jesus said, let the little children come to me, for these, such as these are to such as these belong the kingdom of heaven. probably botched that. Like you can whatever, NIV, ESV, but you like that is Jesus's perspective of children, and he valued and loved children when it was culturally totally not the thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, he valued women before that was culturally the thing to do. Like Jesus arguably elevated women and children more than suffrage, more than anything else in human history did. And that is amazing. And we as Christians should take that example and see what he said and run with it. Yeah. You know, because there's other verses in scripture, you know, children are like a crown to their parents, you know, or grandchildren are like a crown, or I think that's what it says in the Proverbs. I can't quite remember, but it's talking about like the value of family in the Proverbs, you know, many, you know, sons like quiver arrow thing. And I know there's weird movements where people are like pro-natalist in a cult way, like that quiverful movement.
Yeah, quiverful. I was like, what's
oh
the
my
name?
gosh. Yeah, no. When I said the quiver verses. And so we're not advocating Amish, Hutterite, Mennonite, inbreeding, have 20 kids stuff. I think that's wrong too. Like being like, because there's another thing where people are like, the population's crashing, and if we want to save the world, we have to have 50 children. And that's just another doomsday narrative.
Yeah, and your motivation is fear.
Yeah, your motivation is fear. You're not motivated out of love or the desire to see children that know, love, and serve Jesus and leave a better world.
Yeah, and if your motivation isn't like, I'm having kids and discipling them, but instead it's like, this is a hostile takeover. Right?
Yeah, we're going to have enough babies that we dominate the earth. Like, that's so crazy.
That's super weird.
So weird. And then something I wanted to bring up, too, about having children is it gives you a really strong incentive to invest in the future.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important things that's being lost in our society is people are looking just to the here and now. Yeah. Like, what can I do for me here now? Yeah. There's a quote that is, great societies are built when men plant trees under whose shade they will never sit. And that is like, you need to plant trees that you won't see the benefit of. And if you don't have kids, you don't see the benefit of doing that because it requires a lot of self-sacrifice and discipline. But when you have kids, like, you know, I would fall on my sword for my kids. Like there is almost no level of sacrifice I wouldn't go to protect and provide for my family. And it says, like, the one who doesn't provide for his family is worse than an unbeliever. Yeah. Like, that is our drive as men should be to love our wives, to love our children. There's verses that say don't be harsh with your wives, and there's verses that say don't be harsh with your children. So I think it's important to take that into account, like the tendency of men to like be like, meh. Yeah. But like, dude, just, it's so beautiful, it's so valuable. I'm so grateful to God that that we had our kids when we did, even though it was a surprise. Yeah. You know, it's just like, it's so perfect. And also, that wouldn't have happened for us if we had believed that abortion was an option. And I'm so grateful every day that we didn't. And in our society, that is becoming a huge thing. I don't necessarily want to end on this note, but I think it's kind of worth talking about. Like, abortion and killing of children helps push this adult infantilization and also the lack of responsibility, and it detaches meaning from like sex and relationship. Like, there's a whole bunch of really bad things, and it's nothing new. Yeah, people have been killing babies in society for a long time,
and we look at that in like the Bible, like people passing their babies through the fire, right? And we're like, oh no, and it's just like, we're still doing that, right?
Yeah, we just don't wait until they're out of the womb. We just do it while they're in the womb. Yeah. And they had like stuff that they would make prostitutes drink or whatever if they got pregnant, and like their abortion is nothing new. Yeah. Our society has just medically sanitized it and made it invisible. But the
we
horrors,
call it healthcare
we call it healthcare. The horrors that are ensuing because of that, and I mean, frankly, like, I'm not usually like a doom and gloom judgment of God guy, but you know, I do not look forward to I would not want to be one of those people facing the judgment of God. having made those choices.
Yeah.
Also,
and on that,
there's grace, there's mercy. If you have gotten an abortion, I recognize that it has probably left a scar on your soul that you feel is unhealable.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it probably isn't healable because that's a super heavy burden to carry. But there is hope and freedom in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, like God, he does not condemn people. It says therefore there is no condemnation for those of us who are in Christ Jesus. There's condemnation if you're outside of Christ Jesus and accepting that it was sin and that it does need to be repented of. If you are justifying abortion and the murder of your own children from a cultural lens of like it's liberation, I'm free, blah, 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 you have not repented and there is no forgiveness, and that burden will weigh very heavily on your soul. Yeah. But there is freedom in Jesus. Yeah. I think it's really important to recognize that. And that's why we say, like, Jesus is the answer to everything. Yeah. And Jesus values family. If you follow the Holy Spirit, I think he can walk you into the journey of a healthy marriage and a healthy family and healthy relationships with your children and wife, or husband and children if you're a girl. And that's awesome. Yeah. I think that's cool. I think that Jesus really is the answer to everything. Knowing him, knowing what he wants for us and how he leads and guides us in life leads to actually the best outcomes is really, really beautiful. Like there's a verse like, trust in the Lord with all your heart and don't rely on what you think you know. In all your ways acknowledge him, including, marriage, children, all these things, and he will give you a straight path. Yeah. So, ask God, like, am I to have a family? Am I to be married? Am I, and he'll guide you in the way forward and he'll provide for your needs. This has been kind of a heavy conversation, but I think it's worth having because the culture is so loud that sometimes it's easy to forget, and we find ourselves slipping into the mindsets that are presented to us just because they're so prevalent. It's easy to just kind of just drop into that lane like ruts, like ruts in the snow. Your car just kind of sinks into the ruts. But for us, we need to be looking at scripture and we need to be looking at the character of Jesus. Yeah. Well, thank you for listening. I am going to plug my book because I just released a book called The Young Man's Manifesto. It's not for women mostly. If you are a woman, you can totally read it.
Or you can give it to someone you know.
Yeah, a young man that you know. It's based on my biblical worldview. I try to write for both a Christian and non-Christian audience. Like, the truth is truth regardless of whether you believe in Jesus or not. Yeah. So I just wrote down all the truth that the Lord has shown me over the last many years of my life, and I put it all as pragmatic advice in a book called The Young Man's Manifesto. If you're a mom, you can give it to your sons or to the young men in your life, nephews. If you are a young man, I think it could be beneficial for you. Ask the Lord if you should buy it or whatever, or you can message me and I can send you a copy for free. I don't really care. But that's my thing. That's my project. That's my ad, because we don't have ads.
Sponsored by Ben Cricket.
Yeah, The Cricket and the King, sponsored by me. Okay. So, have a good rest of your day. Be blessed, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.